In this video, I will show you how to implement a simple and effective trading strategy on the platform BTCC in just 6 simple steps. To claim the best sign-up bonus possible, you will find the sign-up link down below in the video description. Then you will automatically always get the best bonus, and if you already have an account, you could either close your old one and create a new one, or simply use a new email address to still qualify for the bonus. What is actually our goal with leverage trading? In leverage trading, you want to use a leverage, and ideally you want to use a large leverage. Without leverage, you could just also buy on the spot market and achieve the same result. With a small stake, we can potentially trade with much more capital and also make much higher profits than without a leverage. But there's of course a catch to this whole thing. Just as profits are magnified, losses are also magnified. With a sensible strategy, however, these risks can be reduced to a minimum while still achieving the desired effects of a leverage. And how that works, I will show you right now. For every trade, there's always preparation. The point is to identify a setup and then find an entry. The goal is to catch a long-term trend in one direction. You can spot these easily by higher highs and higher lows, for example, for an uptrend, then draw these trend lines and start going in with a long. But there, of course, comes the next question: where do you enter in such a trade? Rather at the top or at the bottom? In an uptrend, it's definitely better to enter at the bottom line. And the reason for that is that we can set our stop loss much closer if the trend were to break. If we enter in the middle or more at the top, the stop loss would have to be set much further away from our entry to be in a place where this trend would actually be broken. And therefore our potential losses would be much higher. In a downward channel, of course, the opposite applies, and it's better to enter rather at the upper band. Next question, is it better to go long or short? If you believe in Bitcoin long term, it's generally somewhat better to go long than short. And the reason for that is, on the one hand, because Bitcoin tends to move upwards more strongly than downwards in the long run. We have roughly 3 years of rising prices and 1 year of falling prices. And if you are wrong in a long trade, so you bet on rising prices, but the price crashes instead, you of course make a small loss by being stopped out here, but at least the Bitcoin price is now cheaper and you can buy back into Bitcoin at a lower price. On the other hand, if you're wrong in a short trade, so you bet on falling prices, but the price rises instead, again, you make a small loss by being stopped out here, and Bitcoin is now also more expensive to buy back. Alright, so now let's get into the 6 steps of how to practically open a position. The first step is to open our position. So we need to go in here on open, set our margin mode to isolate. This is very important to limit the risk to our trades separately, and then also choose a leverage. You can typically start a trade with the 3x to 5x leverage. The higher the volatility, the lower the leverage. So for smaller coins with stronger swings, I'd rather go for a 3x, and for bigger coins like Bitcoin, 5x is also fine. Next, we need to determine our position size and stop loss, and these are typically determined by how much you want to risk in this trade. For example, let's say you want to risk a maximum of 1% per trade. With a capital of $5,000, this would mean you would risk a maximum of $50 per trade. So I've made this example calculation. We want to place our stop loss at a maximum loss of $50 at a current price of $100,000. This would mean if you want to place our stop loss at a 5% drawdown, the stop loss would be at $95 right here, where we would make a $50 loss. So the stop loss sits at a 5% drawdown. For us, these losses are multiplied by 5 because of the 5x leverage. So that means we need a $200 margin, because then a 25% loss would mean a $50 loss for this trade. Then we also know our position size, because of course $200 of margin, which is our own capital, times the 5x leverage will equal an entire position size of $1,000. To open this trade on BTCC, I'm going to show you in the demo trading mode. So I'm just going to simply leave this on cross for now, put the leverage to a 5x, choose market to open the order immediately, and then type in here the quantity in USDT, so the position size. I'm going to type in $1,000, but I need to do a little more because it's a minimum requirement in here. And then I can also set the take profit and stop loss down here. Right under margin, I can see how much of my own capital I'm using as margin here. So the round about $200. And down here, I will now click on advanced and then choose by profit amount. And I want to make the maximum of $50 loss for this trade. The price is automatically calculated and set up in here. And now I can click on long, confirm, and then I'm already in my trade. I can also directly see it in the chart. This is where I entered, and down here is my stop loss. So now we've got this trade opened. If the price doesn't go into our desired direction, we've limited our losses with a maximum 1% loss. However, if the price does move into our desired direction, we can move on to our second step, which is to move our stop loss above our entry. In this case, the price has gone up by 10%, so we are already $100 in a profit. And what we can do now is move our stop loss, for example, to $105,000. This would mean 5% above our entry. And now at our stop loss, we would even make a $50 profit at this new price. To edit your stop loss on BTCC, we have two different options. You can either just go into the chart, drag and hold, and as you can see, once you move it to a different position, you can directly see how much profit or loss you would make at that price. And if I just release it, I have now replaced it to a new location. Or what I can also do is just go down here under take profit and stop loss, click on this pen icon right here, then go to buy profit amount. I can also type in now how much profit or loss I want to make at my new stop loss price, or just type in the price in here manually. In our next step, we can now also increase our leverage. A high leverage is especially dangerous at the beginning because the liquidation price would get very close to our entry and we can easily get liquidated. But this trade right here is already in profit and we've even secured ourselves with a stop loss above our entry, and therefore we can now easily increase our leverage without increasing our risk. In this case, I'm going to push it up to a 25x leverage, and in step 4, we now also need to reduce our margin. So far, we've only increased the multiplier, but this new leverage only becomes effective if we also reduce our margin. And what we effectively do is we pull out our own capital of this trade, and we can do that from $200 of margin before down to $40, because then with the new increased multiplier, 25 times 40 will still equal the $1,000 position size. Only then does the new high leverage really take effect. One thing we also notice is that our liquidation price, of course, now increases to around about $96,000 to $97,000. But in this case, it doesn't concern us because we've secured ourselves with a stop loss in profit anyways. To increase the leverage of an opened trade, I can simply go down here on this pen icon. And now I'm going to push this up to a 25x leverage and click on confirm. And as you will see, now I've increased my leverage in here, and also my margin in here is automatically adjusted and gone down because BTCC works under an automatic margin mode. So we don't need to do this step in between, and the freed up margin from here is already back available as our capital. We can now use this freed up capital, for example, to open further trades or to even further increase this trade. And that brings us to step 5, which is to scale up the trade. We now have a solid trade with minimal stake. The stop loss is above our entry and we can simply let it run. But now we still also have the option to further scale up this trade and thus increase future profits. If, for example, we add another $1,000 to this trade, we increase our position size to $2,000 and the margin from $40 to $80. What then happens is our entry price then also, of course, shifts upwards to around about $104,700, but still remains below our stop loss. That means from now on, if the price goes down, we still don't make any loss, but if the price continues to go into the right direction, we make double the profit from this point on. To increase your position on BTCC, we're just going to go here to the right as if we would open a new trade. Then I'm simply going to type in here the amount again, so a bit more than $1,000, and then just click down here on long, confirm, and then you will see we've doubled our margin as well as our position size to 0.02 BTC. Now let's get to step 6, which is to take profits. At a certain point, you should always realize partial profits. Just as we gradually build and increase the trade, we can also exit in several steps and secure profits that way. It's important to not get greedy. Ask yourself, for example, if I didn't already have a trade open, would I open a new trade in this direction at this current point? If the answer is more likely no, then that's a good sign to take some profits. We can easily do this by going here to close and then, for example, taking out a quarter of this trade. This means our margin gets reduced from $80 to $60, the position size from 2,000 down to 1,500, and from a total profit of $200 in this case, where the price is already at $115,000, we take up 25% of the profits, which is around about $50 of profit that are already secured in this case. So to close parts of our trade on BTCC, we can simply go here to the right at the bottom, click on close, and then choose how much percent of our trade you want to close. 25% is not enough because the minimum is 0.01 BTC. So I need to close around about half of my trade. Click on close. And then you can see we've now decreased our position size back down to 0.01 BTC. These simple steps of this strategy can easily be executed multiple times for one trade. The goal is of course to build up a long-term trade that slowly builds up and can even get to a 100x leverage to maximize the potential profits, but also limits our losses by always making sure we've secured ourselves with a stop loss above our entry. To get started right away and try all of this out in the demo trading mode, I've put you the sign up link with all the best bonuses down in the video description. And if you have any other questions, always feel free to ask them in the comments.